fantasy football, we are building our teams around, well, really two positions, wide receivers and running backs. And today we're going to take a look at some of our favorite running backs to draft in fantasy football. We're going to break them down by their average draft position, what round they're going in, and where we have them ranked. These are the players that you need to be targeting. Dave Kluge and I are going to look at 10 total running backs, 5 from each of us. We're going to be a little bit quicker on these, but Dave, these are some of our favorite guys that we want to get out of every single fantasy football draft.
Put my money where my mouth is too. Like when I picked the guys that I wanted to talk about today, I simply went over to the different best ball platforms that I've been drafting on all offseason, and I said, which running backs have I drafted the most? Those are the guys I'm going to talk about. So we're not trying to pull any wool over your eyes or anything. These are the guys that I have cold hard American dollars invested in this offseason.
How many dollars? Don't answer that question.
Yeah, more than I'd like to admit. So and more than I'd like my wife to know. So let's just keep moving.
Don't worry, she doesn't watch the show. All right, let's hop into these running backs here, man, because we've got some, I mean, big names here, and then some I call them sleeper names that we've got on this list that we just really love to get in drafts. But let's start towards the top. These are gonna be some of our bigger names here. Dave, kick us off.
Alvin Kamara is a guy that I have just been aggressively drafting this year. He was the RB2 in PPR last year before he ended up going down with that injury. Has shown no signs of diminishing efficiency. He's still breaking tackle, still ripping off the big plays, still getting all of the targets out of the backfield. And there's a lot of bias that goes into Alvin Kamara. Like people have been writing him off for years, and he just continues producing. And I know there's this thing going around over the last week where I've seen multiple people like Alvin Kamara has never had a 1,000-yard rushing season. Well, so much of his value comes from scoring touchdowns and catching passes. So yeah, he's not a big time rusher. But the point that Dan Hendry made to me a couple months ago, I just can't stop thinking about, is that he was injured during the fantasy playoffs. So you kind of get this out of sight, out of mind mentality. But if you look at what he did last year, it was similar to Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, guys that were pushed down in drafts because of their age, and they still performed at very high levels. And I think the other bias that kind of bleeds into the analysis when we're talking about Alvin Kamara is that the Saints are going to be bad and their quarterback room is going to be bad. Well, over the last year, Alvin Kamara has played with Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, Ian Book, Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian, and he's been fine. Like since Drew Brees left the Saints, we have been waiting on Alvin Kamara's downfall, and it just hasn't happened yet. The way that this guy plays, his ability to shake from defenders and avoid big hits, rack up big plays, catch balls in open space, I think that we still have some juice left in this tank. I don't think that Alvin Kamara is just going to suddenly fall off the age cliff, but that's kind of what ADP expects of him. And you can get him often in round 4. I've seen him fall into round 5 occasionally. I've got him as my RB11. Like if this guy was going in round 3, I would still be drafting him. But the fact that you can get him 1 or 2 rounds behind where I think he should be going, just one of the easiest picks to make in drafts.
Yeah, I started to dig in a little more on Alvin Kamara because I was high on him as well, and I think I'm still like relatively high. I got him at running back 16, not nearly as high as you at running back 11. But when I started to look into it more, I did start to see that there was a little bit of a difference. Yes, he survived without Derek Carr, but he didn't thrive without Derek Carr. And like that's what I like. I don't want to get tied to that in round 4. That I'm still going for someone who can not only give me the floor, but like give me top 5 ceiling. Maybe Kamara can do that. I'm finding it personally to be less likely if the quarterback situation is that bad with Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, some of these guys. Like as the season went on, I'm looking at it. The performances weren't bad, but they were just good. Where we get a lot of running back 17, running back 14, running back 18, running back 15, 23, 11. Like it is consistent. And if that's what you're going for there, you can go and get a player that has a good floor and consistency. I'm not going to knock that at all. Where I'm gonna take him in drafts and where I would rank him, I don't necessarily see the ceiling there, and that's gonna be something like I'm gonna talk about that a lot today. It's just running backs with volume that are on good offenses. You have another guy on your list that I think is probably in a better situation with in terms of volume and good offense, but I think Kamara's still a great player. I'm not against taking him in round 4. If he falls to round 5, I think he's an auto pick right there. He's a fantastic RB2 on a fantasy team. I'm just not gonna be as high as you are. All right, let's go to the next player on here. I want to talk about someone that I think just has legitimate RB1 overall potential here, and you're able to get him in round 2 of fantasy drafts. For me, it's Devon Achane, running back for the Miami Dolphins. Dave, You've got him as your running back 5. I've got him as the running back 4. Question, your running back 5, who do you have him ahead of that people might be surprised?
I have Devon Achane ahead of Ashton Jinty, Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry. So I've got Christian McCaffrey ahead of Devon Achane, and I think that's probably where we dissent a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's who I have him ahead of in mine. Obviously, I've got Bijan, Saquon, and Gibbs, but I've talked about this before that I look at Devon Achane and Jameer Gibbs as essentially the same player here. And I've mentioned this stat before, and I'll just reference it one more time for people that are here for the first time with our show. Going back and looking at the normal ecosystem, the scenario where Devon Achane has Tua Tagovailoa, it's over 22 fantasy points per game. Jameer Gibbs with Dave Montgomery is under 19 fantasy points per game. There's something to be said about what happens when a player is in their proper ecosystem. Does that always happen? No. And like I'm going to acknowledge that. In the games without Tua, it was just awful for Devon Achane. I will say this, backup quarterback situation is better. Offensive line situation in Miami is better. There is no Jonnu Smith this year. This is something where yeah, without Tua, the Miami Dolphins offense does fall apart. But with him, and even with a backup quarterback this year, I do see it as being something that is very viable. And if everything goes right, you're looking at a guy that can give you RB1 overall output. Looking back at last year, he really even wasn't getting the crazy workload that we want to see out of a big time running back. And now the Dolphins lose Alexander Madison. This is something that can even go up even further and further. Last year with Devon Achane, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle on the field, Devon Achane was looking at a 22% target share. That would have been number one amongst all running backs, even higher than the guy we just mentioned, Alvin Kamara, Dave. So I do think this Miami Dolphins team, one, they're going to be stuck passing a lot because that secondary, that defense, not great. And Devon Achane's value, much like Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey and Jameer Gibbs, comes through that passing game. Now, I think we have to be honest and authentic with viewers and listeners. There's always the risk of Tua Tagovailoa getting hurt, a guy like Ollie Gordon taking over a goal line role for Devon Achane. Like these things can happen. But the upside here for an RB1 overall, and I can get him in round 2, I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. We know that, and I think the thing that excites me most about Devon Achane is we've seen two very productive fantasy seasons come two very different ways. Rookie season, he was kind of this RB2 that was ripping off explosive plays, scoring from 60, 70, 80 yards out. Last year, we didn't see the explosive plays, but we saw him make up for it as a target magnet. So I do like that there's multiple paths to an elite finish here. I think my big fear isn't even so much to a Tagovailoa injury. Like that's definitely in the back of my mind. It's that Mike McDaniels gets fired midseason and that we don't know what this offense is going to look like without Mike McDaniels. If they have to patchwork something together, start putting other running backs out there, I just think this is a broken offense. Like what we saw last year, I don't think is sustainable. And what we saw in this preseason game, where it was very much so just this little dink and dunk offense that could behoove Devon Achane as it did last year. But I think the fear is that it's not sustainable and that it could run Mike McDaniel out of Miami. So I've got him as my RB5, ahead of Ashton Jinty and some other big names. But a lot of times when I'm drafting at that area in the draft, like that 1-2 turn, I do find myself passing on Achane to get Drake London, to get Nico Collins, to get Jackson Smith-Njigba, Lad McConkey. I just feel like I like the wide receivers late in the first round and in the middle of the second round a lot more than I like these running backs this year.
Yeah, I think it's just for me, it's how Devon Achane has been able to produce. I believe, like you mentioned, he's done it in different ways where he's been able to be the receiving guy, he's been able to be the guy doing it on the ground. And for me, what stands out the most is he's been able to do it with limited volume. And
Mhm.
so let's put him on a team where there are now limited weapons and he can maximize that volume. I mean, sure, we can get excited about the Jalen Wrights and Ollie Gordons, but Jalen Wright still just has not looked good in his career for the Miami Dolphins. Ollie Gordon had himself an okay preseason here where he might get some meaningful snaps. What I love is we've got an improved offensive line. And that's something I think kind of gets swept under the rug with a lot of these players sometimes. It's just the ecosystem around them. And yes, this is the Miami Dolphins offense is a delicate ecosystem, but when it's on, man, is it on. And we're looking back to when people were drafting Tyreek Hill in the second round and he was wide receiver 1 overall. That's kind of how I'm viewing Devon Achane here as a guy that you can get in the second round and be the running back 1 overall. I love the 2 new guards. Dave, I know you're familiar with James Daniels, who was on the Bears for a little
Mhm.
bit, but Jonah Savina, who was the second round pick of the Miami Dolphins out of Arizona, he's a hell of a blocker in the run game. And so I love the adjustments that have been made here for this team. So we'll see if they can put it together, but I'm leaning towards yes. Like the upside for me is just still there with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, let's go to our next player on here, Dave. This one, I think, actually might be my favorite on your list because I have a rule with running backs. I want to get good running backs on good offenses with good volume. And this guy checks all three of those boxes.
I don't know if he checks the good running back box, if I'm being completely
I
honest. I
do.
think he is a above average running back for sure. Isaiah Pacheco,
What,
um, I,
splitting
I,
hairs between good and above average.
I mean, like, if I had to rank talent level, he's probably like in the 15 to 20 range. I think that he is a fine running back, but what I like more than anything is the situation that he's in, where there's like no competition. We're looking at the ghost of Kareem Hunt. We're looking at Elijah Mitchell. Brashard Smith was the guy that we were excited about early in the offseason. Sounds like he might not even make the team now. So what I see is just like the path is blazed right now for Isaiah Pacheco to kind of do what he's done over the last couple of years. He's a clear RB1 on the depth chart. The injury seems to be in his rear view from what we're seeing out of camp. He looks healthy. He's got his burst back. But last year, before he got injured, 42 opportunities in his first two games. And it's really just as simple as that. If you tell me this guy's going to be averaging over 20 opportunities per game on one of the best offenses in the NFL, that's a guy I want on my team. So I almost did like a twofer here because these guys are going back to back in so many drafts. DeAndre Swift is another guy going right around the same area as Isaiah Pacheco. And I just always, when I'm drafting, like want to save one of those sixth round picks to walk away with one of Isaiah Pacheco or DeAndre Swift. And a lot of times, if I'm picking at the 6, 7 turn, I'll just take both of them. These are both just running backs that I think are grossly misvalued because there is this perception that they aren't very good. But when you look at perception or when you look at projections and you look at where the touches are going to go in these backfields, DeAndre Swift is one of them, of course, but Isaiah Pacheco is on a better offense, and we could probably project even more volume going to him because there's just such little competition in the backfield. So a guy that I was off on early in the offseason because I was worried that Brashard Smith was going to come in here, siphon away all of the passing down work, but it sounds like he's just struggling to get up to NFL speed. So Isaiah Pacheco should pick up right where he's left off over the last couple of years, being a top 12 running back.
Yeah, man, I'm with you here on Isaiah Pacheco. Like I love what we got to see in previous seasons, but I also like to see what we got to see in a small sample size last year. Checking it out right now, he's getting 21 opportunities per game to start the season. Like this was a Chiefs offense that knew they wanted to get the ball in Isaiah Pacheco's hands, and I think that we do this oftentimes. We do a "What have you done for me lately?" without the context, right? And we look at, oh well, Isaiah Pacheco came back, he didn't play well. That means he's probably not good. He's probably washed. See, this is what I've been telling you. He was a late round pick. Like he's not a good player. No, he came back from a broken leg and he did it faster than he should have against the roughest stretch of their running back schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs. So yeah, in a team that's going to have the entire offseason to get it back together, an offense that I think could be better than they were last year. A lot of that's going to depend on when Rashee Rice can get back in there, but yeah, I love the Isaiah Pacheco pick here. And Dave, you and I are like well above consensus on Isaiah Pacheco. I think most people that are even high on him are like at running back 24. You and I are at running back 19 and 20. So we're seeing ADP in the sixth round. I wouldn't be surprised if you're sitting in drafts and people are getting him in the seventh round.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know. I've had you and I both had a couple of good years as rankers, and maybe this year I'm just getting a little bit over my skis. But like in years past, I was so willing to kind of play the ADP game and let players fall to me. And this year, I just see some guys that I think are just very mispriced, and Isaiah Pacheco jumps out as one of those guys. So I'm not playing though. Like let's hope Isaiah Pacheco falls to me in round 7. I'm just going to say I think the market's wrong on this guy, and I'm just going to reach for him in round 6 and get him on my team.
Next guy I want to talk about, I think has similar, if not the same potential as Devon Achane. And I might even vouch for this guy as a better pick because he's getting drafted later. Chase Brown, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals, going in round 3, I think has the similar ceiling as Devon Achane, and with that draft value of being in round 3, Dave, I've got him as my running back 9, or excuse me, I have him as my running back 8. You also have him as your running back 8 as well. I think the big thing here with Chase Brown is that he hasn't done it for long enough and that he's still not a household name, which is weird to say because that's such an intangible thing. Like that's not a data set, that's not anything I can prove, but to me it feels like the only reason as to why people are probably not as high on Chase Brown here. It's like, well, can he do it again? This is the same thing that we did with Kyron Williams after his big rookie years. Well, can he do it again? And for Chase Brown, we got to see that sample size, and it wasn't like 3 games or 4 games. It was the final 8 games. And this is, yes, without Zach Moss. And I know people are saying, well, what happens when Taj Brooks gets in there and Samaje Perine gets in there? I'm not expecting them to have some sort of 60-40 split on this offense. This is something where we have seen the Bengals are committing to Chase Brown and giving him a heavy workload. You go back to last year, the final 8 games, he's averaging 18.5 PPR points. It's good enough to be the running back 4. He's getting 86% of the snaps. He was number 1 in running back carries, number 2 in running back routes, led all running backs in targets per game as a starting running back. Like, this was a guy that the offense flowed through. And this goes back to my rule. Find good running backs on good offenses with good volume. He meets all of that criteria. When you have a guy like this that you can get with, I don't want to keep overusing this, hyperbolically, but RB1 potential overall, and you can get him in round 3, I love that pick. And I had to make this switch in my rankings, Dave, because I was looking at Kyron Williams and saying, okay, he's got the floor, and I still love Kyron. Josh Jacobs, he's got the floor, and I still love Josh Jacobs. Jonathan Taylor, like all these guys are there. Can they be the RB1 overall? Are they getting the passing work needed? Is the offense always going to be good? Kyron Williams is hinging on Matthew Stafford, which I now see that's a little hypocritical of me to do that with Devon Achane. But there's just more excitement there. The Chase Brown thing, though, is we know this is going to be an offense that has to pass a lot. Chase Brown's going to be there on the passing game a ton, and he's getting the volume on the ground. So for me, Chase Brown becomes my favorite pick in round 3 of fantasy drafts.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I'm just taking in round 2. Another one that I think is just
Mm,
very mispriced. I'm not going to wait for him in round 3 and hope that I get him. I'm just going to reach for him at the end of round 2 and get him on my team. And you talk about like Kyron Williams, like we kept betting against Kyron Williams to do this. But I want to say, like, I think there was reason to bet against Kyron Williams. Like,
sure.
size adjusted speed score, Kyron Williams is in the 9th percentile. Chase Brown is in the 92nd percentile. So, I mean, we're just looking at like worlds different
Very
athletes
different
here.
athleticism. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chase Brown is a guy that I have been moving way, way, way up my rankings. I've got him ahead of Derrick Henry. I've got him ahead of Josh Jacobs. He's just a good player on a good offense, catches passes, scores touchdowns, gets the lion's share of the work. I think what we got is some clarity on what this backfield is going to look like. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but it seems like Samaje Perine is going to come in as the passing down guy. But just to pass block, we still saw Chase Brown at a handful of catches in that
Right.
preseason game. Taj Brooks is going to be the injury away contingent guy. Like if Chase Brown is a miss time, they'll plop Taj Brooks into that role. But I've just gotten so bullish on him. And, something, again, I keep referencing Dan Henry and, very sharp guy. I recommend following him, reading his articles and all that. But he pulled up a nugget earlier in the offseason that Chase Brown looked at what he did last year and saw that the one weakness he had, which I thought he did quite fine in, but he thought that he could improve as a pass catcher. So he started working with wide receiver coaches this offseason because he said he wants to be a better pass catcher. And the other thing that Dan said, he's a Bengals fan, so he had his ear to the beat. He said this even before Dan Pitcher said it, but he made the Austin Eckler count. This is a
Yeah.
small, compact, day 3 / undrafted, pretty much the same thing, but a small, compact runner with elite athleticism on a good offense who catches passes and scores touchdowns. The ceiling is so, so, so high for Chase Brown. So when I'm drafting, like I said, at that 1-2 turn, I'm willing to just kind of overlook the running backs and take the receivers there. But once I get into round 2, like the middle of round 2, Jonathan Taylor is my primary target. Once he's off the board, Chase Brown is next up in that list. So I'm okay taking Chase Brown as early as like the 206, 207, 208. As soon as Jonathan Taylor is off the board, Chase Brown is the guy that I'm willing to take.
Yeah, it's interesting when you start to compare him to other running backs. Like, I almost look at him and say, okay, what is the case against Chase Brown? Because it's very hard to poke holes in his profile right now. I think for some of these other guys, we can say, well, like for example, for Jonathan Taylor, I can say the offensive line is not as good. The quarterback play could be astronomically bad. So there's probably still a floor there. But like when it comes to Chase Brown, I say, what's the hole that I can poke in this profile? There really isn't one. This is a Bengals team that ranks second in overall pass attempts, first in passing yards. They want to use him more as a receiver. Their offensive coordinator's talking about him as a top 10 running back in the league. Like, that's not a guy that you're like, what we need to do is take him off the field for Samaje Perine. Like,
Mhm.
this is a guy who could be catching 60, 70, 80 passes in an offense that is wanting and actually needing to pass the ball, Dave. So, like, the more I'm starting to eat the cheese on Chase Brown here, the more I'm thinking like, man, we should probably be talking about him in the same light as we do guys like Devon Achane and Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe that's going too far and that's pushing, too much on this agenda, but like I'm almost there mentally, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and like, I'm toying with it right now. I've got Ashton Jinty as my RB6, and I kind of want to move him below Jonathan Taylor and Chase Brown. I don't want to panic and overreact too much to that preseason game, but that Raiders offensive line is horrendous. And we're expecting Ashton Jinty to elevate himself above that situation. We don't need to wish cast that with Chase Brown. Chase Brown is already in a good situation. So, yeah, he's a guy that I've warmed up to a lot. And early in the offseason, I will say, like, when Dynasty Brain is on in March and April and May, I look at the additions to the backfield. Zach Moss was still there at the time. They added Taj Brooks. They brought in Samaje Perine. And I said, what if we see that 96% opportunity share shaved down to a 50 or 60%? But then you hear the way that Zach Taylor and Dan Pitcher have talked about Chase Brown, and they said that they look at him in the same way that they look at Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as being this explosive playmaker that
Yeah.
they have to focus on getting the ball to, that can, score from anywhere on the field. And the way that they are just gushing about Chase Brown and how they plan to use him this year, he has been a big, big riser for me.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to our next player on here. We're going to be moving away from. Oh, I still have a few more of these early round backs, but Dave, this is where you start to go a little bit deeper into your bag and go down the draft board. This is a running back that you're looking at in round 8. Talk to us about Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, this is a simple one. He is the clear RB1 in New York, and all offseason. It's so funny. You can look at like the ADP analyzer tool on 4for4, and you see the lines for ADP for Cam Scadaboo and Tyrone Tracy, and they're just going like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and they're within like half a round of each other all offseason. And then in his first handful of touches with the ones, Cam Scadaboo got injured. A hamstring injury. But even before that injury, it sounded like Cam Scadaboo was behind Devin Singletary, that it was like Tyrone Tracy was the clear RB1, Devin Singletary was the RB2, and Cam Scadaboo was struggling to get off of the second team offense. Now Scadaboo is a rookie who is missing install as he's recovering from an injury, and this team has just gushed about Tyrone Tracy. And right now his ADP is RB30. He was the RB26 last year as a rookie, so we're already drafting him below where he finished last year. And this is still a new to him position. Tyrone Tracy was a wide receiver who recently converted to running back. I think he's only going to get better. And there were some fluky things last year, drops and fumbles, and those are frustrating to see. But regardless, they still remain steadfast in their faith for Tyrone Tracy, and they kept putting him out there even when he was having these ball security issues. The word out of camp is that he has tightened that up a little bit, that he's not coughing the ball up like he did last year. And I just look at a guy with off the charts size adjusted speed, a guy who can catch passes out of the backfield, and a guy who doesn't have a lot of competition for touches here. So I've got Tyrone Tracy as my RB25, which is one spot ahead of where he finished last year. But even that, like I've got him in this tier with David Montgomery and Chuba Hubbard and James Conner. And I could argue that his ceiling is higher than all of those guys. I think the concern, of course, is the Giants and what they're going to look like this year. But where he's going, another one of those guys that I don't want to play the waiting game and hope that I can draft him. I'll just reach around early and get him on my team and not have to worry about it.
I mean, he's definitely an intriguing prospect for me when we're getting to round 8 because there's not many guys there with starting caliber volume where you can say he's got upside in both the running and receiving game. Tyrone Tracy, former wide receiver in college. Like this is a guy who can get out there and catch passes and run routes and do what he has to do. I think the biggest thing, Dave, is like you've mentioned before, is like Cam Scadaboo has not been a big part of this
Right.
offense here in the preseason and in the offseason and through training camp. And maybe it's Devin Singletary time. Like, I don't know, but we could see an improved Giants offense here, especially with Russell Wilson. And we saw him how he was passing the ball to running backs last year. So, like, Tyrone Tracy, I think, gives you, um, I'd say a pretty good if you want to build your team a little bit differently and you're aiming for like getting a quarterback early, a tight end early, you go and you get some wide receivers, a hero RB, whatever it is, he becomes a very intriguing RB2 in that kind of build if that's the route you want to go.
You know what? Update the graphic. I just moved him from running back 25 to running back 24. After seeing how Rico Dowdle was involved, I'll take Tyrone Tracy out of Chuba Hubbard.
Well, I'm not updating the graphic. I'm not sending that in. All right. Next on here, I'm gonna go back up the draft board here because I've noticed that there's almost a running back for every round that we get into in a fantasy draft that I'm like, ooh, yes, give me that player. And when I get to round 4 and I'm looking at exciting players, I know one of them is the guy that you mentioned earlier, Alvin Kamara. For me, if he falls into round 4, that's a nice spot. But Ken Walker, and I know I can hear the groans. I can hear people slamming their laptops shut, throwing their phone out the car window. Just take a second and hear me out here, okay? We both have him as RB15 in our rankings. And we're not saying that you need to go and reach for him in round 3. And in some cases, and especially home leagues where people are frustrated by injuries, he's falling even outside of round 4, okay? This is just the average draft position. So you can maybe even get him in round 5. The reason I'm going to be a little more bullish on him is this Seahawks team and the Seahawks offense is a little bit different. They are committing heavier to the run. Mike McDonald has said that. And with this offense and Clint Kubiak, they are committing more to the run. And especially with their quote plan that they have for Ken Walker this offseason, this is something where they are managing every single rep that he is taking in camp to make sure that he is healthy throughout the year. They're not trying to have him run down before week 1. You go back and look at his time with the Seahawks. He's been the clear running back 1 with 63% of the rushing attempts. We finally got out of this notion that Zach Charbonnet was going to take touches from him. Zach Charbonnet still exists. He's still there and he's going to get touches, but this is not something where he is stealing touches away from Ken Walker and he won't be his workhorse back. Walker's been 5th amongst running backs, or excuse me, last year he was 5th amongst running backs in target share. He was on pace to be 2nd amongst running backs in receptions before the injury happened. So that was a whole new part of his game that got unlocked. And through week 12 last season, he was actually the running back 7 in PPR. That was ahead of Devon Achane, a guy who we are sometimes happily taking at the end of round 1, early round 2. And so for Ken Walker to be going where he is, guys, I'm happy with that. If we're talking about a guy that can be a top 7, top 5 running back, and you look at Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator that I've mentioned, his running back 1 in his offense gets a massive opportunity share. 2nd highest expected fantasy points per game amongst running backs since 2021 is a Clint Kubiak running back. Right up there with Christian McCaffrey, the only single running back in the NFL that is higher than the Clint Kubiak RB1. And so if that's what we're looking at here, essentially what we're looking at is the same problem with every single NFL player, is I hope he doesn't get injured. But while he's on the field, he's going to be very, very good. And that's what we want. Guess what? Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about him later, Zach Charbonnet. You can take the insurance policy later in your draft if you really want to. You don't have to, but the way that the draft board sets up, it's pretty easy for you to do so. So if you want someone that has top 5 running back ability and you can draft him closer to like running back 17 in the 4th or 5th rounds of your fantasy drafts, that's how you win fantasy leagues, is by taking shots on these guys that can finish way higher than they're being drafted.
You know, a wise man once told me, Alfredo, that there's no reason to go out and search for injuries because they'll find you in the regular season. And Kenneth Walker's already dealing with an injury, so that
He's back in
concerns
practice,
me.
full pads. He
All
is
right.
back in practice, and it has, the rumor has been dispelled. It was quote foot soreness. He does
Foot
not have an
soreness.
actual injury. He is completely healthy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you said you've got him as your RB15, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I've got him too. You know, such a good player. And I said it yesterday. I remember because you liked the word I used when I said precipice. And I think that Kenneth
Precipice.
Walker, we've seen the explosiveness. We know he's a skilled player, and I think he's on the precipice of having that big breakout season. And he just like he does things I've never seen a running back do in my life. Like that play that he had last year where he drove a defender back first into the ground with his helmet and then did like a Spider-Man front flip over him and then took
Yeah.
off running. Like he's just a freak athlete. Like he's doing things out there that nobody else is doing. So I like him a lot, but it's a good segue for the guy that I want to talk about next.
Ew. Yeah, let's hop into that because I think that this Seahawks offense is going to be a very interesting one for us to look at. And like I mentioned, whoever the RB1 is from week to week, whatever it is, that's going to be an extremely valuable player. So Dave, talk to us about Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, this is a guy that I'm just trying to get like in every single one of my drafts this year because when I'm looking at running backs, you know, a running back who starts for 17 games and gives you good production is obviously very, very valuable. But there's also a lot of value in the guys that are just an injury away from elite production. Now, we've never seen Kenneth Walker play a full season. Missed 6 games last year, missed 2 games in each of the previous seasons. And I don't want to say that that means he's going to continue missing, but we have noticed a pattern in Kenneth Walker's ability to stay healthy. So Zach Charbonnet, I don't think he's a guy that's going to have any sort of standalone value. When Kenneth Walker's out there, it's going to be the Kenneth Walker show based on the way that we've heard Clint Kubiak talking about this backfield. But when he doesn't play, if he has to miss a game for foot soreness or something else, whatever it may be, last year we saw Zach Charbonnet get 6 starts and he averaged 17.6 half PPR points in those 6 starts. Saquon Barkley, Jameer Gibbs, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson were the only guys to average more points per game than what Zach Charbonnet did when he was starting. So I don't know if you're getting anything. Like you might just draft Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker plays 17 games and is awesome. And oh, well, you wasted your 10th round pick on Zach Charbonnet. But if Kenneth Walker has to miss a game or 2 games or 10 games, whatever it is, you're getting a plug and play RB1 in Zach Charbonnet. And when I'm looking at the running back position, I'm not looking at it the same way that I'm looking at wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends, where I want to draft a guy that I could just plug in that spot and keep him there for the entire year. Running back is a weekly position, and you're going to have these windows where guys pop up and are studs for a month and then go back by the wayside. And that's kind of what I'm expecting with Zach Charbonnet. So keep him stashed on your bench, use him when you can, but when he is out there, you're getting a potential top 5, top 10 guy and I've heard this weird thing because I tweeted this earlier today, and a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, this isn't a good run scheme for Zach Charbonnet, this outside zone run scheme." But that's exactly what he ran at UCLA when he had
Right.
back-to-back seasons with 1,100 plus rushing yards. So we haven't seen him do it at the NFL level yet. But this, where he was drafted in round 2 out of UCLA, he's going right back to that same system that he found a lot of success in. So Zach Charbonnet, huge fan of the talent. He's an injury away from meaningful production, but when that opportunity comes, he is just a smash RB1.
Yeah, man. I'm just going to keep leaning into the Clint Kubiak offense. Clint Kubiak running back one. They want to use their running backs in the passing game. They want to get big runs from outside zone schemes. This is a team that's going to be dependent on the run, especially with a new quarterback under center, not having the same offensive weapons in the pass game that they've had in the past. Like everything I think for this offense is going to end up running through Ken Walker and Jackson Smith-Njigba while those guys are healthy, and that's the caveat for every single player in fantasy football. And so that's where I'm just going to keep leaning. So you do go out and you draft Kenneth Walker. Go. This is one of the few times where I'll just say go and get the handcuff
Mm.
because it really makes sense in this offense.
I will say though, Torrey Horton erasure will not stand for that. You know, if you're just
Dude,
going to say
like
every touch is going to
what
Kenneth
is he, your
Walker
wide
and Jackson
receiver
Smith,
6 like on your roster? Come on. I mean, I'm excited. I'm
I
sure
might
he'll
I
be
might talk about
good.
him tomorrow. I might talk about him tomorrow on our
Oh
favorite wide
God,
receivers
Dave.
draft show.
Come on, man. Come on. It's gone too far. I like him. I really do. I like him. I don't know how relevant he's going to be for fantasy. All right, next guy on here that I want to talk about is going to be TreVeyon Henderson. And this is, guys, there's not a data set. I can't say well, last year for the Patriots he did this. Like no, like that's not how this is working. We're looking at a running back coming out of Ohio State who I think outside of Ashton Jinty was the most explosive running back in this draft class, and his diverse skill set of being able to work in the passing game and being a guy who can create plays in limited touches. We've seen him do it at Ohio State with Quinshon Judkins coming in and taking touches from him, and he was still incredibly productive. He's got the early breakout age. We know this is a guy that can do it right out of the gate for the Patriots. And looking at Ramondre Stevenson, who I think people have gotten worried about, like, oh, what if he's going to be taking touches? Sure, Mike Vrabel did say that Ramondre is going to be a large part of what we do. Dave, we both use Coach Speak Index over on Twitter. They're a
Yep,
great
he's actually
resource.
joining me this week on the Launchpad. We're going to record tomorrow, so you can check that out and kind of learn a little bit about how he indexes all these players. Greg is a great guy, big fan of him.
That was a very intentional promo. I really intended to do that. But we look at this, and so what Coach Speak Index does is they rate the reliability of coaches on what they say by tracking everything that they say in these pressers and what actually comes to fruition. Mike Vrabel has a 40% reliability rating on depth chart and usage. This is just not a guy who's all that honest about what he does with running backs. And if we're being real, Ramondre Stevenson simply hasn't been very good in the NFL over the last couple years. A lot of this has been partly because of the Patriots, but the Patriots and this coaching staff in the front office have told us everything we need to know. They went out and drafted TreVeyon Henderson with essentially, if you want to look at it this way, a late first round pick with how early they took him in the second. Dave, I know your Chicago Bears wanted him, and the Patriots made sure that they went and nabbed TreVeyon Henderson. Right now, you and I are pretty high on TreVeyon. We're above football guys consensus. We're above industry consensus. I've got
I'm
him at running
Snoop
back.
Dogg high on TreVeyon
I
Henderson.
was gonna say, man, I was gonna say, I thought I was high. I got him running back 21. My G, you're Willie Nelson here. You are running back 16 on TreVeyon Henderson. This is a guy who I think in most home leagues will probably go in round 6. But if we're looking at average draft position across all of the platforms, and that's including underdogs. So remember, best ball is going to prop these things up a little bit. But if you want TreVeyon Henderson, I think you're having to look at him in round 5 of your fantasy drafts. And I think it can pay off for you in a big way.
Yeah, I love TreVeyon Henderson. I was a big fan of him, and I think it was one of those like prospect fatigue things where like
Mhm.
2 years ago we talked about him as the consensus RB1 coming into the class. He returned to Ohio State, and Quinshon Judkins was there, and they ended up splitting touches a little bit more than people had expected, and his efficiency fell off a little bit. This is a guy who had like over 2 yards per route run in 2023. That fell off a little bit in 2024. But it was just different usage. Quinshon Judkins was getting a lot of touches there in Ohio State. But for me, I don't want to overreact too much to preseason games, but I also want to trust what I'm seeing with my eyes. And when your first ever NFL touch is a 100-yard kick return, it's like, guy's pretty good. And then you watch what he does on offense, and I don't want to make the comp because it's going to upset people, but like I see Jahmyr Gibbs in TreVeyon Henderson's game where he is a smaller guy, but he is just super twitched up and he's got that strength and that contact balance where he can just run through a defender's chest. And you don't expect it from a guy with his stature. Like he plays like a 230-pound back, but just so quick, so strong, so violent. And you look at the pass catching role in a Josh McDaniels offense, you look at the competition that he has in Ramondre Stevenson, who I'm not a big believer in, even having him at RB16, like I feel like he could crush that ranking that I have right now. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if TreVeyon Henderson finishes the year as a top 5 running back, and we're looking at him next year in the same tier as Ashton Jinty and Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson as one of these can't miss phenomenal prospects.
That's exactly how I'm seeing him. I'm seeing him as a guy that can be like a Bucky Irving, like a Chase Brown, like all these big play running backs that we've seen in years past. The Patriots, and specifically in Josh McDaniels offense, there is going to be a high running back target rate out of this offense. They are going to use running backs in the passing game, and that's where TreVeyon Henderson shines. Not only as a receiver, but he's the guy that they feel comfortable keeping on the field because he's such a good pass blocker as well. And this team, at least the wide receiver spot, it's still a little ambiguous, right? Like we don't know who the true wide receiver 1 is on this team and who's going to be out there commanding targets. For all we know, guys, it can end up being TreVeyon Henderson, right? And I know it's a little mystery boxy, like it could be a boat. Like sure, it could be, but TreVeyon Henderson right now, all the signs are pointing to a guy who's going to get used heavily in the passing game. He's got the explosive ability. There's a reliance in terms of all the things that Ramondre Stevenson isn't necessarily good at or that coaches really want out of their rookies, which is pass blocking and protecting the football, not fumbling the ball. I know Ramondre's had issues fumbling the ball. TreVeyon Henderson, 0 fumbles in college. Like this is a guy who fits exactly what Josh McDaniels wants to do. The feeling here is that they have been very intentional, excuse me, about going after TreVeyon Henderson in this draft. This is a team that's going to use him.
Yeah, and there was a, this was back in April. Sleeper, they like to do their, show a clip of a player and who does this guy remind you of? And I took the bait on this one and I quote tweeted it, but I said, when I'm looking at TreVeyon Henderson, the comps that I made, Reggie Bush, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brees Hall, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, he is a pass catcher with open field elusiveness, breakaway speed, and he is a very good pass catcher, or I'm sorry, pass blocker, which gets overlooked all the time in fantasy football, but he's not going to be a liability when he's out there. Like they're not tipping their hand. We talked about this a little bit with RJ Harvey yesterday, that like I think now, knowing the struggles that RJ Harvey's having with pass blocking, when you see him on the field, you can assume that he's going to run a route. With TreVeyon Henderson, you don't know if he's going to be blocking, if he's going to be chipping, if he's going to be running a route. So it keeps defenses on their toes, or on their heels, I should say, which can open up potential mismatch opportunities for TreVeyon Henderson. This is a guy that I am just very, very, very in on this year.
Yeah, it just sounds like we're sitting here putting him up on a pedestal, but it's not just us. Like it's been the coaching staff, and hearing Josh McDaniels say that he has never coached a weapon like TreVeyon Henderson in his career.
Mhm.
Like there's no one like him as dynamic as him, and he went on to reference like other pass catching running backs like Danny Woodhead and Shane Vereen, and I think a lot of people took that and ran with, oh well, that means he's just gonna be the passing down guy and he'll be a decent like running back 3 in fantasy, and that's not at all what he means there. This is just it's a
What he
special
compared
player,
was their speed, where he said, like,
right? And
Shane
he said he's
Vereen was
fast, fast.
fast and Danny Woodhead was fast, but TreVeyon Henderson is fast, fast, is what he said. So,
Exactly.
like, what I'm hearing, like, these guys were giving us, like, good fantasy production, and Josh McDaniels is saying that he is better than them. So, like, what is there not to like?
Yeah, yeah. I honestly I think right now a lot of what this is us trying to decipher a language. And that's what a lot of people are looking at is decipher a language, and that language is rookie football player, and we don't quite understand it. What do your eyes tell you? This is a good player that's going to be given a lot of opportunity. Dave,
Yep.
take us to our next one here. We're going way down the draft board into round 18. I don't even know if a lot of drafts go to a round 18, but sure. Let's take a look at this guy who could and probably should be your final pick of your fantasy drafts.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got him. I think he should be around 13 picks. So I mean, like even if you're not going in a super deep draft, I think this guy is just very mispriced. And it's Will Shipley. Never hoping for injury by any means, but there's been so much discussion this year about Saquon Barkley and the usage that he had last year, and that all these people are planting these flags that Saquon Barkley isn't going to be able to hold up to last year's usage. He's going to break down. He's going to get injured, whatever it may be. I'm not buying into it, but there are some good points made. And history has told us that, it is really tough to succeed after a season with that type of usage. And Will Shipley right now has carved out the role as the team's RB2. Like he is a very high end handcuff. I see him in the same tier as a Zach Charbonnet or a Ray Davis, one of these guys that will step in as a 1-to-1 replacement on a good offense behind a good offensive line. But for whatever reason, the market just isn't there. His consensus value right now is RB 63. Looking at our ADP right now in football, guys, he's going behind Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Like, I don't know
Bill,
why we're doing that. He's going behind Justice Hill, Woody Marks, Roshan Johnson, Kareem Hunt, Rico Dowdle, Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson. I think it is wild that ADP prefers all of those guys ahead of Will Shipley. He's one of those guys that you can draft right now, stash on your bench. Maybe Saquon Barkley's healthy for an entire season, but it's the same type of argument that I just made for Zach Charbonnet. You're not drafting Will Shipley with the expectation that he's going to carve out a role. You're not drafting him with the expectation that he's going to start for 17 games. But if Saquon Barkley has to miss a week or 10 weeks or whatever it is, Will Shipley is getting plugged in as a workhorse running back behind one of the league's best offensive lines. It's just crazy to me that he isn't valued in the same area as all of those other very high end handcuffs.
don't say that Saquon Barkley could miss up to 10 weeks. Don't put that evil on us in the world, Dave. It's
I'm
not nice.
sorry. I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, like, I kind of dumb it down in my rankings, and I just have this
Sure.
cluster of these high end running backs. And for me, like I don't know why we're putting some guys arbitrarily ahead of other high end handcuff running backs. So for me, I just have this cluster of Ray Davis and Zach Charbonnet and Will Shipley and Isaac Arendo and Tyler Algier and Taj Brooks. Like all of these guys are an injury away from being potential league winners, and I want to take those guys before I'm even thinking about the Austin Ecklers and the Justice Hills and the guys who, sure, like they're going to get some touches on third downs, but I don't care about a guy that's going to average 6 points per game for the entire season. I want the guy who can step in and give me 20 points per game on a week where that opportunity comes up.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And that's where I think like things get a little dicey when you're at like running back, let's say like 40 through 60.
Hmm.
Any of those guys could have the same value because pretty much all of it is going to be based on injury. And like, so for audience members, when you're looking at rankings and you're like, well, you have this guy at running back 40 and then this guy at running back 55. Why is that? Remember that rankings are going to be a little bit different. Like there is a language that you have to understand where sometimes ranking, especially for competition, for accuracy competitions, right? Like that's more of projection of where a player should finish the season. Whereas a lot of what you're going to see on our website on footballguys.com, especially with the upside, the downside, where players are going, is going to be exactly how we view them. So, Dave, if you're looking at Will Shipley, maybe you don't think he finishes as the RB45, but you think the upside he has as the backup, as the handcuffed Saquon Barkley warrants RB45 ranking. That's exactly what an audience member, someone going into their fantasy draft, needs to know.
And something else I'll say is like, peek behind the curtain how these accuracy contests work. You and I have both done pretty well over the last few years. And I think so
Yep.
many people try to like game the system by pushing up those Austin Ecklers and Justice Hills and Kareem Hunts and guys that are going to get sprinkled in 6 to 8 touches here and there. And me and you just say like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to rank the handcuff running backs ahead of those guys. And last year, I don't know how much we talked about Chase Brown as a guy that like we're just like this
Yeah.
guy is so mispriced right now. Like just reach 3 rounds early and get Chase Brown on your teams. And that's how we ranked it last year. So a lot of other people were trying to play it safe because they didn't want to take big stances in their rankings. You and I just moved up, and Zach Charbonnet was another one that we were way ahead of consensus on. And then sure enough, Chase Brown stumbles into a huge workload. Zach Charbonnet gets a handful of weeks where he gets to be a starter as well. And that's why we score highly in these accuracy contests, is because we see the upside for these high end handcuffs that are going late in drafts. And we just move them up a lot higher than the consensus has them.
So, are you saying that us being higher on TreVeyon Henderson means TreVeyon Henderson's going to be really good? Is that what you're saying?
I can't say
That's what you're
that
saying?
indubitably, but
You can't legally say it?
potentially. Yeah, yeah.
Indubitably. All right. Last player we're going to talk about here. And you know what? Like, I'm leaning into it. I'm just going to stand on my soapbox and I'm going to continue to exclaim to the world that I believe that Jaydon Blue will be the running back one for the Dallas Cowboys sooner rather than later. He may not start the season there, but I do think that Jaydon Blue will be getting the lion's share of the touches out of that backfield in Dallas on a team that's going to need to pass the ball a bunch. And that is where his skill set lends itself to the offense. He's a good pass blocker. He is a good pass catcher. He is a good route runner. You even hear it when you listen to the coaches speak about these running backs, where they were asked recently about Javonte Williams, like what he brings to they asked, so first they got asked about Jaydon Blue, and it said, yeah, he reminds me a lot of like a Darren Sproles, a dynamic playmaker that can catch passes and be a big part of the offense that creates plays. And then they asked, what does Javonte Williams bring? Uh,
He's a veteran.
Experience and wisdom. What? Like Javonte Williams, Dave, am I crazy? Javonte Williams is 25 years old. That's not a big difference between the other rookie running backs that are being drafted here. Jaydon Blue is
He did come into
21.
the league at like 20, though. I mean, he was a very young prospect. So he does
Sure.
have some experience, a lot more experience than your typical 25-year-old.
Okay. Yeah, sure. But I'm saying, like, when you're looking at a 25-year-old running back that should be in the prime of his career, and the defining characteristic of that running back is wisdom and experience, and a lot of that
Mm.
experience hasn't been good, that's not something that I'm getting excited about. So I don't care about what the depth chart says. You and I talked about this yesterday on our 32 headlines show, where they talked about how Javonte Williams is the lead running back right now because other running backs are not at camp. Well, Miles Sanders is back in camp. Jaydon Blue is back out jogging today, as well as he's recovering from his ankle injury. And this is one of these things where I know there's not going to be the pressure of him being suited up for week one, starting for week one. He's been through all the rookie camp and offseason stuff. He's been getting first team reps. And that's what I want to see from a young guy. Is he getting first team reps throughout camp? And is he doing that consistently? I've mentioned this already, but with Brian Schottenheimer, this is a team that's going to pass the ball a lot. And that's what I want. Like, I look at Jaydon Blue as sort of a discount Chase Brown. That if we get to a point where we're looking at these other running backs in the roster are not very good, the Cowboys need to pass the ball, especially if their defense is not as good. They're committed to passing the ball, and they're going to have a running back out there that can catch passes. That's what I want. And the fact that I can get that this late in round 10, there's essentially no risk to it. Every single pick from like round, I don't know, Dave, what would you say? Round 6 or 7 should just be pure upside from
Mhm.
there on out. Like, you shouldn't even be worried about filling out your starting lineup because that will happen eventually and regardless, because you're going to be getting guys off of waivers. It should just be all upside picks from there on out. So round 10 to me is the perfect place to go and find an upside running back that I think could finish in the top 24. Do I have him ranked there? No, I've got him ranked at running back 39. Dave, you're a little bit lower, running back 50. We're 11 spots apart. But like I mentioned, when it comes to these backups, it's all pretty interchangeable once you get from one spot to the next.
Yeah, and this is one of the few guys that we dissent on a little bit. I don't want to, open up the Jaden Blue argument for the 18th time this offseason.
Sure.
The one thing though, I'll push back a little bit. You said a good pass blocker. I don't know if he's a good pass blocker. I think that's one of the things that he has struggled with a little bit. And again, like I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm like a pass blocking scout and that I'm grinding every single snap from college, but PFF grade in blocking, both pass blocking and run blocking, was pretty poor. And I read a camp report not too long ago that's something he was struggling with. But either way, I mean, the whole
You're right.
premise
You're
behind
right.
Jaden
I
Blue is
misspoke. I was confusing him with someone else.
yeah, no worries. And I think the premise here is like they're not going to use him as a three down back. The hope is that he can run these wheel routes and these little routes out in the flat where they can get the ball to him in open space and let him make big plays. I don't know, and I do think that the size and the pass blocking could potentially limit his upside because I don't think he's a guy that can step into a three down workload. But the thesis here is similar to like a Keaton Mitchell, I think, or a Devon Achane. A guy who can on limited touches still make up for the limited work with blistering efficiency. I think it's always going to be a Javonte Williams or a Miles Sanders kind of grinding out that early down work. But if you have to look at the guy with the most upside in this backfield, I think it is very clearly Jaden Blue.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not saying that this is a guy you need to reach for in round 7 or 8 and trust as your RB2 or even as a flex spot. This is one of these guys that you draft
A
him
stash,
because he has the upside, because he
right?
can be that person that you're putting in your flex spot in week 6, week 7, as long as you're holding on to him. And all of a sudden you're like, man, this is a game changer for me. That a guy that's coming out and being a top 24 running back each week. And I got the draft in the 10th round. Like for me, that's all I want to do is just go for upside. And yes, I mixed up my TreVeyon Henderson, Jaydon Blue pass
Yes,
blocking
TreVeyon
needs there.
Henderson, heck of a pass blocker,
Yeah,
one of the best in
just
the
insane.
class. Love to see that.
And the other one was LaQuint Allen too, very good pass blocker. And that's I'm getting them all mixed up in my head now.
Dude, I am waiting to see kind of how this shakes out. I don't know what's going to happen in Jacksonville because we're getting these reports now that Travis Etienne is getting all the work with the ones. We saw it a lot in the preseason game, and this could mean one of two things: either Travion or Travis Etienne is actually the one there, or they're trying to showcase him a little bit before they trade him. In which case, LaQuint Allen wheels up for taking over that passing down work. So really interested to see how this Travis Etienne shakes out. Travis Etienne's situation shakes out.
Yeah, it's something that I'm seeing as I'm looking at camp reports now as we're talking about it. I've been tracking it as well because he was like one of those guys I really liked coming out of college, and I'm seeing that as well. That like he's carving out the niche as the passing down guy.
hmm
So I'll be curious to see what ends up happening here. But Dave, I think that's gonna be a wrap, man. We went through 10 running backs here, 10 running backs that we really like in fantasy football drafts. And listen, guys, as always. You can either choose to take that advice or you can tweak it yourself a little bit. If one of these guys falls around later, go for it. But let us know in the comments what you think. If there are running backs that you are targeting, maybe someone from here that you totally disagree with because we're just idiots. But Dave and I have been doing our research and we will be back again with the wide receivers, our favorite wide receivers that we want to be drafting. And guess what? We're back again tomorrow doing that show. So we're ramping things up as we get closer and closer to the fantasy football season. And we're going to be here for you guys for your fantasy football drafts. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at the various average draft positions and how you can beat the ADPs on all of your different fantasy football apps from ESPN to Yahoo to Sleeper. I promise we're going to get the right ADP this year. I swear we'll do it. We'll double and
And that
triple check it.
those shows are always fun too because I went back and I like rewatched those shows that we did last year, and it's not us talking about the typical guys that we like that we have been talking about all off season. We are playing the ADP game a little bit where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
I wasn't crazy about this player, but I think that he's 3 rounds cheaper than he should be, so I'm going to draft him on this platform. So, yeah, a very valuable set of shows that will be coming out next week.
Well, guys, it's gonna do it for us, man. We love that you all have joined us either here on YouTube or on the podcast platforms in Apple or Spotify. While you're there listening, please take a second to leave a 5-star review. It means a ton to us. And always, if you are watching on YouTube, take a sec to like this video, comment down below, make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we have so much more coming to you all. As always, for myself and for Dave, we want to thank you guys for watching all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.